Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi, good morning everyone. Today I would like to retell a story that I have read entitled An Angel in Disguise. An Angel in Disguise is a short story that was written by T.S. Arthur, or known as Timothy Shea Arthur. An Angel in Disguise tells a story about a woman who had been despised, mocked, and hated by nearly every man, every woman, and even every child in her village due to her excess consumption of alcohol. This woman had three children. The first child, named John, he was about 12 years old. The second child, named Kate or Katie, Katie was 10 to 11 years old, and Katie was a bright and an active girl. And then the third child, or the youngest child, is Maggie. Maggie was hopelessly deceased because 2 years before she fell from a window and injured her spine. That is why Maggie had not been able to leave her bed since then. One day, this woman was found dead drunk upon the threshold of her own door. Even though the villagers hated this woman, they still felt sympathetic to her death. Hence, the villagers arranged a proper funeral for her. After the funeral, a chief of the village asked what is to be done with the children, because these three children shouldn't be left alone to starve, and they were still young to work or to get money of their own. And then the villagers and the chief of the village had a discussion. After a long discussion, a farmer decided to adopt the first child, which is John, because he thought that John would help him to do his job in the field work. And then Mrs. Alice, who had been looking a bound girl, decided to adopt Kate, which is the second child. However, no one wanted to adopt Maggie, and Maggie was left alone due to her poor health. And everyone there suggests to take Maggie to the poorhouse, which is a house for a sick and hopeless child. But no one was able to make an effort to do something about it. And after the funeral, everyone started leaving the house, including Maggie's sibling. But there was still someone who still standing inside the house. He is Mr. Joe Thompson. Mr. Joe Thompson looks like a rough man, but he is actually kind and loves children. Nevertheless, Mr. Joe and his wife are incapable to have kids yet. And Mr. Joe Thompson worked as a wheel maker for wagons or carts. And Maggie saw Mr. Thompson was still in her house. And then after that, Maggie called and asked Mr. Thompson to not leave her alone. And at first, Mr. Joe will take Maggie to the poorhouse, but he needs to wait the guardian of the poorhouse to come to Maggie to take Maggie there. That's why Mr. Thompson brought Maggie to his house instead, even though Mr. Thompson knew that his wife would not like Maggie's presence. When he got home, what Mr. Thompson thought was right. His wife asked her husband why did he bring a sick child to their house. And then Mr. Joe explained everything, starting from Maggie's sibling who got adopted and until Maggie that no one wanted to adopt her. But still, Mrs. Thompson didn't want Maggie to stay at their house and asked his husband to take Maggie to the poorhouse immediately. But Mr. Joe answered that he needs to keep Maggie at their house because he needed to wait the guardian of the poorhouse to come tomorrow. And Mr. Joe also asked his wife to look and speak gently to Maggie because she is now a motherless, a helpless, and a homeless child. And later in the night, Mr. Joe saw his wife was sitting next to Maggie's bed and talked to Maggie. Even though he didn't know what they were talking about, but Mr. Joe could tell that his Maggie was enjoyed her conversation with his wife. And while having dinner, his wife asked what is to be done with what is he going to do about Maggie next. And Mr. Joe said that he would take Maggie tomorrow if the guardian of the poorhouse come to his house tomorrow. Mrs. Joe didn't say any of words, but Mr. Joe noticed that there was sadness from his wife's countenance. And then Mrs. Joe gave Maggie a dinner, and Maggie was very enjoyed her dinner. And tomorrow, and then the next day, nor on the following day. And Mr. Joe decided to keep Maggie to live with them for 1 or 2 days longer. And his wife didn't mind about it. Until one day, Mrs. Thompson asked his husband to let Maggie to live with them forever. At first, Mr. Joe was very surprised of his wife's change because his wife, who had been known as cold-hearted, ill-tempered, and mean woman, now changed into a loving and caring and kind-hearted person to a sick child like Maggie. And Mr. Joe realized that an angel had come to their house and disguised as a sick and miserable child and fulfill the dreary chamber of its room with the sunshine of love. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you so much for listening to me, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.